welcome back to the Bruce Poinsette Show. I've got a special guest in studio, first time doing an in studio interview. So cue up in post, cue up all the audience clapping and everything. But I got Lakayana Drury, the executive director and founder of Word is Bond PDX. How are you doing today?
I'm great. We had a lovely pre-show discussion about Star Wars. We're getting ready for a summer internship program, so everything is firing over here.
Yeah, that's awesome. And again, thank you again for coming into the studio.
Thank you for having me.
So for the sake of dramatic tension, I suppose, we'll just start. We're gonna start the interview off. I have a lot of I hover around a lot of like abolitionist circles who are gonna be
Yeah.
wondering, why are you talking with, Lakayana when they work with the police in this way? And I just read a quote off of the site where you say, Word is Bond is not an organization that tries to get young black men to like police officers or change their minds on how they feel about law enforcement. We do not censor the stories our young men tell. We empower young black men to speak their truths. But to that point, you just want to talk about, because the organization has since kind of like evolved into a bigger like leadership development program.
Yeah.
But can you talk about, one, what your police engagement, I guess, like looks like?
Yeah.
And two, what is the biggest, I guess, misconception about that?
I love this question. I'm glad that you started this off, and I had a feeling that maybe that's what we would talk about. So I'm excited about that because it's a really challenging question, and I can't sit here and say that I have all the answers or I even know 100% what where it's all going to go. And I think if anybody who creates a program or a technology or whatever it is, like they're lying if they say they know exactly how it's going to go and exactly what they're doing with it. There's always some belief you have to have in it, and I would say that it's kind of where it starts with me. I'm an optimist. I generally believe um in the good in people and in the good in society. I'm always a glass half full type of person. And I think the biggest misnomer around Word is Bond and the policing aspect of it is like that's the central component of it. In a city like Portland, it's really hard because policing is such a huge issue really in the last few years. Which is one thing I'm really proud about Word is Bond is we didn't start in response to George Floyd. This is not a George Floyd post murder movement. This is prior to that. And so I always find myself having to clarify or explain the law enforcement component of it. And there's a lot of different camps, like there's like we're in the city of bridges, and that's where I feel like I'm a bridge builder, and I'm somebody who because I believe in the good in society, like I'm in a unique position where I can try and like help bridge and bring those groups together. So what we're attempting to do is to create dialogue, and that's where that quote comes from. It's like the dialogue isn't like geared towards some specific like endpoint. Like we want all of our youth to believe this about policing, or we want police to believe all this about young black men. Like it's a space for dialogue, and then they take from it what they will. My personal view is that policing will be here. It's not gonna go away in some form or fashion. It'll be here, and so it's like, okay, well, knowing that, how do we create space where those most impacted by it can share their truths? And to your point about Word is Bond expanding from that, it's exactly true. Like that was one of the core pieces when we started, and then we've kind of added on since then. I will say that I think a lot of people use the policing aspect to not listen to the rest of what we do. And I'm aware of that, and I know people that just like they look at our program and they're just like, I'm just going to use this to ignore all the other stuff that we do. And we do so much else outside of that. And I think that that's just a particular part of our program. And I'm still trying to figure it out. And why I say it's so challenging is that, like, I think a lot of people, it's funny. One of our youth one time asked me, he said, Mr. Drury, do you like the police or not? And it was really funny because he had been through our program, and I think a lot of people are trying to figure out what is my personal view on policing, and I don't have a view on policing as much as I have a view on our country. And our country is run and founded on white supremacy. And if you can have that foundational understanding, then my view on policing is very clear. It's seen through that lens, and it's not. And white supremacy is not unique to just policing. It is in all aspects of our society. So I don't look at the police and say, in their uniqueness of what they are capable of doing, which is taking life. Right? They're one of the only groups in our society that has that ability and judgment in their job to do that. But I don't look at policing as any more ingrained with institutional racism or white supremacy than any other group. So, and with that foundation, I feel very confident that when I approach policing work, that I'm able to do it from a lens that is empowering, and rightfully so. When you are going to sit down with young Black men and policing, there is a natural question of, how are you doing this? What is your lens that you're looking for, and what is your ultimate goal? And so I welcome all those questions, and those questions should be asked. And my only piece to that is that when people are genuinely willing to listen, I'm ready to have that conversation. But sometimes I feel that they already have their mind made up. And so it's if you want to listen and you want to know the story of Word is Bond, it's a beautiful story. If you want to just focus on the policing aspect of it and say, well, I hate the police, so I don't care about this program. And it's the only voices I really care about are young men's voices. They're the ones in this program. Everybody outside of it can have their opinion, but you're not going through this program, and you're also not the target of it. Our goal with Word is Bond is to empower young Black men, point blank, period. And so giving them exposure to many different aspects and places to use their voice is our goal. And so in returning to the original point, my goal, I don't have a set way that I'm trying to guide our youth when they have these conversations with law enforcement, and they come from a variety of backgrounds. Some have had very adverse experiences with police, some have had none. And then you got a bunch of adults around the outside trying to input their view of it, like, oh, y'all should hate the police, or we should abolish it, or and some support it and some like to see it. So it's a variety, and I have to balance all those voices. And when I see a murder like George Floyd, yeah, I'm going to sit home for like the next 5 days. Like, what am I doing with this program? Am I leading it in the right direction? And then you see killing after killing and various other racial incidents. Does that keep me up at night? Do I ever sit there and think like, dang, is this the right thing to do? Absolutely. And that goes back to my original point of, when you create something, you never 100% know where it's going or how it's going to be. But I do believe that I can impact things. And I've seen officers come through our program and say, I learned something today. And I've seen young men come through our program and say, I learned something today. And if that can happen, then that's at least worth trying. And this is just my version of how I think society can change. It doesn't stop anybody else from working on their aspects of it. And so what we do in Word is Bond is a particular lane, but it's not everything. And I think that's another misnomer people have, is they think that somehow that I'm suggesting, or that Word is Bond is suggesting, that by having young Black men and law enforcement sit down, that will alleviate institutional racism or police brutality. Conversation needs to happen. Policy change needs to happen. Culture change needs to happen. Institutions need to be changed. All of that. And we are just one lane of many.
Yeah. And, I think there's a few things there that really resonated with me. I think that idea, we talk about using, a police engagement as basically a way to like shut off the rest of the conversation or not listen to anything else. I really, I see that a lot in terms of not just that, but I feel like in some way, like, just because we have so much access to information, and especially today we're on like so much like social media stuff where it's just like everything is not just, we don't just have access, we're competing for attention. So we're like, people are overwhelmed, and anything that gives you the opportunity or the chance to be like, okay, I don't have to think about that anymore. Like we jump at that like a fundamental way. But specifically with this, I think, we live in like an ecosystem of different tactics, and this isn't like a new idea. This has always been the case, especially when it comes to Black liberation. And I know I've had like, my mom worked as a principal and administrator in Portland public schools for decades, and before that, New Jersey. I've done stuff with as far as like anti-racism organizing stuff in LO, and I'll say as far as like a particular connection there, because we've had some officers in LO who've worked with the Word is Bond program or gone to like some of the sessions, and I'll be honest with you, like when we'd have conversations about like policy with them, and specifically around like profiling, and they'd be like, well, I've been through, I went to Word is Bond and it was great. And it gives me part of that, like, are you just using them as like a prop? But I say that because with the group I'm a part of, Respond to Racism LO, I've seen people do a similar thing where they're like, well, I go to the Respond to Racism meetings, so everything's fine, right? And it's like, hold on. Because it's like, because that's not even like, I don't put that on you or the program. I don't put that on us. And it's not necessarily even on these people saying that, because it's just, what we say in passing in conversation. But the feeling you get when you hear that, where you're like, 100%. Are you really, I hope you're taking more than that from it, right? But I also understand that, there's gray areas in this. Like, I'm not a big police fan personally, but I also know that, again, just through having, a mom who worked in education, through my other experiences, the reality is like a lot of intel and a lot of like information I have as far as like how things work systemically inside has come directly from talking with like Black officers, just, informally. And it's not just a, I'm on this side, you're on this side. It's like, again, we all live in like this like ecosystem.
Right.
And where there's a lot of different tactics, there's a lot of different engagement, and, what you said about like being an optimist and believing in people, I feel that. And like, even if, your tactics are different than mine, we're both like, we both care about young Black men in particular, our community, and we're trying to make it work. So that's why I was really glad you were open to this conversation.
Absolutely.
And really welcoming that first question, especially. But to that point about how Word is Bond has evolved, can you just talk about, sort of the different aspects of the program? I know you do like done trips. It's big on leadership development. You've got working on a summer internship program right now.
Yeah.
So you just talk a little bit, give people a little bit of an overview of that.
Yeah. I mean, like, so, right. Like when people want to talk about Word is Bond and what it does, this, that, the third, we're employing 30 young men this summer. Talk about that, right? $50,000 our young men will make collectively. That's huge. In a city that doesn't offer many opportunities for young Black men, youth in general, youth of color, that's a huge opportunity. And that's why that's like one of the biggest things about our program is the economic impact that it's able to have, and then the exposure. Like, our goal is to help expose our young men to as many possibilities and as possible versions of themselves that they can be. So our summer internship program is called Rising Leaders. It's 7 weeks long. It's paid, and it's a 3-year rite of passage program. We've built out 2 of the years so far. So the first year is a cohort-based model where they meet 4 days a week. It's business casual dress, so they're learning how to be in professional environments, learning what it feels like to be in a suit, which is for Black men a very powerful feeling if you're ever in a room with other Black men in suits, and especially to be as young as they are, 16 to about 19 years old. They learn public speaking, career exploration. We have the public safety piece, which not only includes dialogues with officers, which, just to go back on that one more time, there's 5 workshops. The officers come out of uniform, no weapons, and we start with interpersonal storytelling. So we're not talking about race. We're not talking about George Floyd, like police, nothing. It's like the first meeting is just like, who are you? And like sharing those stories, and it's all interactive workshops. So it's never like we're just sitting down like in two chairs and like, tell me about yourself, but it's like guided workshops led by myself. And then through the subsequent weeks, they get deeper and deeper into the conversations till about week 4, where we can like, we've built enough of a foundation where we can have some of those larger conversations. So that's the law enforcement aspect, which takes up about, I would say about like 15 to 18% of the summertime program. So what are we doing for the rest of those days? They each are work on a storyteller project, which features a mantra that they create, goals for their future, a vision statement. They get professional photos once they get their suits that we tailor for them. So they get to see themselves in really powerful ways, and having a professional headshot for yourself and a picture that you designed, where it was taken, and the colors of your suit, and then learning to tell your personal story. And I think that's what gets swept under the rug so much sometimes, is like, that's what Word is Bond is at its core. It's about storytelling. And what is your story? And for young Black men, our stories are so often told for us, or told by other entities, and oftentimes in negative ways and portrayals. And so it's helping our young men discover, what is my story, and what path, and what can I be in a world that has so often shown me very few possibilities, either incarceration or entertainment of some sorts, whether it's athletics or music. And outside of that, there's not much expected of us. So we want to um, like compliment, or not even compliment, but offer what is not offered in school about your cultural identity, get them exposed to different Black leaders in the community, get them to learn about their history. So they do tours around the neighborhood, learning about Portland's Black history, learning about Vanport, learning about the Black Panther Party. We have a Black women's luncheon, and so that's an opportunity to hear from Black women. What are their experiences, and how, as a young Black man, do I interact with women? We talk about mental health. We do outdoor leadership. Portland, Oregon is the center for outdoors, right? But there's such white spaces. So we take our young men camping, many of whom have never been on a trail, right? And so exposing them to different ideas and aspects of life so that they can see what they can be. And then that's the 7-week first year program. Second year, they're offsite in different internships. So this summer, we'll have 9 different internships. We have one at Hood to Coast, one at Titan Freight, one at Sockeye Marketing and Development, District Attorney's Office. One will be with Senator Ron Wyden. So they get to learn and see all different career fields that they could possibly be in. We'll have one here at the Numbers, which is awesome. In the school year, we just started a 7-day leadership trip to Washington, D.C. My goal is to get them outside of this city. In a city as white as Portland, Oregon, you don't have much perspective. I remember I had a student one time, and he said, Mr. Drury, like, I have friends that have never left our block, never left our community, and I don't want that to end up happening to me. And I know from my own experience growing up, we didn't have extra money to be going to Disney World or taking a trip, let alone out of the country. So our 7-day leadership program is completely paid for the young men. The only thing that they have to do is raise $400, which works on their other leadership skills of public speaking and things of that nature. And we took 11 of them this past March. It was an amazing experience for them to see East Coast cities, to go talk to officers who work in a agency that's almost never had a white police chief, to be in a city where 40% of the population is Black, and it's not strange to see large groups of Black people. So we got to go to Philly as well. We got to go to Baltimore, and even having their suits everywhere they went, people's heads were turning. Where are y'all from? And I told the guys, I'm like, I guarantee you, they're never going to think you're from Portland, Oregon. They thought they were in law school. They thought we were from Atlanta, Georgia. And they were kind of dreading wearing their suits everywhere they went, especially the Black people. Oh my gosh. You're just like, wow, like, it's so great to see. And by the end of it, they get it. They're like, now I understand why we're in these suits, why I'm here, why I'm a part of this. And you see their minds see the bigger picture of just everything that we're doing. And a lot of them come into our program and they want to be paid. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for a summer job. And it's like, I'm not faulting them. You coming from a lot of different communities. Who doesn't want to be paid? What adult doesn't want to be paid? But when they get into the program and they see all the other things that we do, you know, it's so much more than that. I'm able to put money in your pocket, but I'm also able to put an idea in your mind. And that idea that I want to stick in every young black man's mind is that you can be whatever you want. Everything is possible. And we're not shown that. We're not shown that in classrooms. We're not shown that in society. When we walk past people, when we show up at a public place like a mall or a park, we're often shunned or not wanted in those places. And so I'm trying to help our young men see the infinite possibilities of what they can be.
Yeah, I was at this gathering where we're kind of having a discussion around this idea of, how do you show up for youth? And, it quickly got to just how broken the school systems are. And so many of our solutions, we're thinking like, okay, so how can we fix this broken system? But then one of the people there brought up this, was just talking about rites of passage. And I just think about what you're saying, even about the suits, because I was briefly part of a rites of passage program in Portland, when I was in like 8th through 10th grade, the Prospective Gents Club. And, I think about like some of those lessons that even if they didn't necessarily come to me or they didn't fully, I didn't fully get them at the time. It's an experience like the older I get, I'm so grateful for. And I look at just all the things, like you said, that you're not going to get in the classroom, but having those people in the community, having those people who know how to kind of give you that perspective, like it can just be life-changing in ways, again, that you're not necessarily going to process until years or maybe even decades later.
100%.
And then also when you're talking about just professional development opportunities, because it's one thing to, be an intern, one thing to, get some of these opportunities, but when you do put like that professional, specifically that paid element to it, like that carries over. And that, maybe not everyone necessarily is like, okay, I'm going to go into a career in this, but that's professional experience. That's, that's getting you used to how things are going to work when you're out there in the world.
100%.
So
100%.
Yeah.
And I know Kevin Fuller too from Prospective Gents.
Okay. Yeah. Mr.
Shout out to him.
Yeah, absolutely. So talking about, because you moved here, we're talking about off camera that, about 6 years ago from Madison, Wisconsin.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Can you just talk about one, like what brought you to Portland?
Yeah.
And I was curious, like, how does Madison compare with Portland?
Yeah. So I'll say this in a very short, I think Madison feels less pretentious than Portland. Demographically very similar, predominantly white population, smaller black population. Madison is kind of like a mix of Portland and Salem. It's the capital, whereas Portland's not. But it's also one of the larger two cities between Madison and Milwaukee. And then here you got Portland and Salem. So I think they're a mix of both. But when I say it's less pretentious, it's like we have donut shops, but we don't try and go over the top like Voodoo Donuts, right? We have ice cream spots, but it's not like a Salt and Straw. It's just like we just serve ice cream. So it's like it feels like just a little less gimmicky in that sense. But very progressive city. They had the Mifflin Street riots in the 60s against the Vietnam War. So there's definitely an undertone of political activism that's very similar to Portland. They can turn anything into a political scene. Go Google Halloween in Madison, Wisconsin, and you'll see all sorts of craziness that's stemmed from that. My own political awakening happened in 2012 when Scott Walker introduced a bill that cut away public unions to all public sector workers except for those in public safety of all systems. So that saw millions of people outside the state capitol for like weeks on end. Me being in Portland doesn't bother me in the sense of being in a predominantly white city. I've seen it. I get it. Portland has its own quirks. The white folks here seem to be a little bit just different in the sense of like they kind of try and project their inclusiveness outwardly, that liberal bubble of like, oh, like there's a Black Lives Matter sign for every man, woman, and child, it feels like, in Portland. And it's not always sincere. And so like going through those layers and I think it's really been broken open in the last few years of just the inequities that have existed in Portland. So it's not that liberal sheen is not there as it once was, I feel like, but I would say it's definitely a little bit more, again, in your face, kind of like with all of a lot of things that Portland does. It's a little bit more out there than I would say Wisconsin. What brought me out here though is just my sense of adventure. I was sitting in Wisconsin at one point and I was like, I've never been to like the Pacific Northwest, I just said like the upper left-hand corner of the United States. I didn't know it as the Pacific Northwest at the time, but I was about 22, 23, and I planned a road trip from Madison, Wisconsin through the Badlands, through Yellowstone, Portland, Seattle, Vancouver, 2 weeks in a tent. The car I drove up here in right now is the same car I have from that road trip in 2014. And so when we came through here with my brother and a couple friends at the time, it always stuck in my mind as a place could possibly come back and visit and possibly live here. And then I was in Philadelphia at the time, and right in 2015, I was teaching elementary, and I applied to teach at Rosemary Anderson High School out here, kind of on a whim, and I got the position. And within a year, we started Word is Bond, and the rest is history. Now I'm here and loving my experience here. Would I like to be in a more diverse city? Yeah. But in my work, working with Word is Bond, I'm surrounded by the things that bring me joy every day. I got to work with young Black men. I got to work with Black leaders and work on issues of race. So in regards to a lot of my other friends that are transplants that are working at companies that bring in transplants, and they're the only person of color in it. That's never been my experience in Portland. I've never been in a space where I'm just the only Black person of thousands of white people in an employment space. Obviously, like in their day-to-day, yes. So that's what keeps me grounded.
Mm. And Word is Bond started in 2017.
Yeah.
Right. So, I feel like we, overuse the term like meteoric rise and everything, but, you have gotten like a significant amount of attention and coverage and recognition, including, if I remember correctly, Portland Business Journal's 40 Under 40.
Yeah.
Most recently. Well, can you just talk about, like how does it feel just having like some of these, accolades that you've gotten in recent years, and how you talk about kind of like staying grounded, but it can be hard out here.
Yeah, it definitely is. And the success I've experienced is humbling, and it feels, it's like, I feel like I'm not gonna say overdue, but it's definitely been a grind. I started Word is Bond. So this is how Word is Bond started. I was teaching at Rosemary Anderson High School, and, I spent the year there, my first year, trying to get the attention of their executive director, Joe McFerrin. I was introduced to him like on my first couple days of work, and he handed me a book. He was a Black executive director, so that was super exciting for me. And then he handed me this book when I was introduced to him, like, hey, go read this book. And I was like, I don't want to read this book. Like, I want to pick your brain. I want to be like in your office. And so I just spent that first year like making sure the activities I did in my classroom got to his attention. And then at the end of that year, I took my students to the train station where the Max attacks had just happened. And we spent a day doing chalk, and like our students just felt really good because they knew some of those two girls. A lot of our students knew those young women on those trains. And it was like what I took away from that experience was that our young people wanted to be somehow involved in the grieving that was happening. And by taking them there, it gave them that opportunity to kind of be a part of that. And when I sent the pictures around to our staff, Joe McFerrin saw it, and he was like, he finally got a hold of me and said, hey, like, we've got this community members that want to start this program that brings together youth and police and have conversations. And so from there, I bring in the idea of it should just be young Black men, and then it kind of expanded from there. And the reason why it expanded from there was from my own experience growing up. I'm the oldest of 3 biracial children. My father's from South Sudan and my mother's from Wisconsin. I didn't meet my dad till I was 10 years old. Um, that had a significant impact on me. Being in a predominantly white city, I didn't see a lot of other black men around. All my friends who had black fathers, none of their dads were around. It's just like that's how it is. The white kids live right next door to the school. Black kids are being bussed in from apartments around the way, and that's just my understanding of white supremacy was grounded really early in my adolescence. In everything that we saw, the most successful versions of anything were white people. My mom put me in the Big Brothers and Big Sisters program in 4th grade, and she said, I want him to have a black male mentor. And they told her, that's a 2-year wait. We have so few black male mentors that you'll have to wait probably at least 2 years if you want to be matched with them. As luck would have it, I was matched within months with a black man from Detroit, Michigan, who worked for General Motors, and he had just moved there and enrolled in the program. And I was matched with Kevin Torrance. That was his name. And what was really cool about Kevin was since he worked with GMC, he had a new car every month. Like he was like a sales representative, so he got a new car. So just imagine my excitement as a kid growing up without my father. You got this mentor, he's black, and every month he's got a truck or a car or a Jeep or something like that. So Kevin's mentorship of me had a tremendous impact. I graduated high school with a 2.3 GPA. I struggled immensely in school, and it's really hard for people to see now because they see me as like, oh, Portland 40 and 40. They're like, you must have been class president in 6th grade. 6th grade, I could barely even turn my assignments in. I was going through so many things and not seeing. I was taught by all white teachers. I had one black teacher kindergarten through 12th grade that had a huge impact on me. So graduated high school with a 2.3 GPA, and then like went to like a PCC type community college, and then got into a 4-year university after my 3rd year of applying to these universities. And I got in because of a learning disability. I was diagnosed. They didn't even let me in on traditional academic standings because I still didn't qualify. I got in because of a learning disability from 6th grade. But once I got to that college, it was like outside of Madison. It was at UW Stout. Shout out to them because that was a turning point in my life. 7,000 students, 100 of them are black. If you were to look at that school and say, would a young black man thrive there? I would say probably not. I did. The combination of being outside of my hometown and being 21 years old and kind of looking at my life and saying, where do you want to go, Lakayana? Like, there's so many directions, and you really have never achieved in the way that your mom feels like you could, and maybe I internally felt, but outwardly, I was shunned by a lot of my teachers. My life was built around grades in school, and if you don't have good grades, then it's like society basically tells you you're worthless, and that's kind of how I felt. But then being at that college, something about just the timing of my life and the distance from home, from everything that had shaped me, I kind of found my voice and found how I learned, and I excelled there. I became president of the Black Student Union. I stopped going by my childhood name, which was Lucky, and I'm going by my full African name. And so my identity really started to crystallize. And once I figured that all out, like I just had this passion to just try and outdo all the odds, because none of my teachers in high school or elementary or middle school thought I would succeed. And I got that from my peers too. I had this sense that they felt because their grades were better than mine, or whatever the reason was, that they felt entitled. And there was a lot of arrogance I felt around me. So my life since 22 and now being 33 has been just about proving myself right and just like smashing through every like version that people thought I could be. And I never thought I could be this because I never saw it. And that's what I'm doing with Word is Bond. I want to help our young men see their possibilities, because I know what they're seeing in school. They're not being showed anything. I knew when I was in school, like I just had this sense. These teachers don't care about me. They don't even understand me. They don't understand my name. They don't understand how I learn. They don't understand my skin color. They don't understand my history. And they might not even care. So, long story, very long. That's how I got to Portland. That's how I started Word is Bond, and that's kind of how it all came together.
Yeah. Lakayana, thank you again. Before we get out of here, you talked about the summer internships, but yeah, just what's next for Word is Bond?
Africa. I have to get us. I have, I have to get our young men to Africa. I want that to be part of their experience. So the first year was the cohort based. The second year is the internship. The third year, we're going to do this 2023, is take a group of our young men to the west coast of Africa. Because what I want Word is Bond to be is a holistic development program for young black men. And by the time that they go through that, they've had multiple different experiences that empower them. So think about a young black man who's 18 years old, who's spent a whole summer learning about their personal story, spent another summer getting professional experience, and spent a third summer in their ancestral homeland. Like, what kind of mentality that young man will have about himself going into the world. In my opinion, it's like unlocking them. It's like taking, what's the blue pill in the Matrix, where you like, yeah, it's like taking the blue pill. Except we call it the black pill. But that's what's next for us. We're doing strategic planning right now, building our infrastructure. It's just like what Word is Bond has been like my whole journey in Portland, trial by fire. I have no experience or background in nonprofits. I don't even have a teaching degree. All I have is passion and lived experience. And I just pour the two of them into a little pot, stir it up, and then we just start creating things. And that's what I want to do. I would eventually love to have different chapters in other cities. I know there's young black men all across this country that need programming, and that's what we are about. Unapologetically young black men. We don't serve women. We don't serve all youth of color. We don't serve BIPOC youth. We serve young black men. Before George Floyd was murdered, people would ask us all the time, what about all these other groups? What about this? Why just them? When George Floyd was murdered, people stopped asking us that question. They see, okay, now I get why it's this. And you don't go into a store except for maybe a grocery store that would have all kinds of foods, but right? Like, places specialize in different things. So why is it wrong for us to specialize in young black men? I don't want to be a mediocre program that serves everybody. I want to be good at one thing. Popeye serves chicken. If you want a burger, you got to go to Burger King or McDonald's. Word is Bond serves young black men, and we do it with excellence. So that's what I want to do. I really want to get us established to like we're like really solid. Like, I feel like people look at us now and they're like, okay, like y'all are getting success or y'all are looking, but in my opinion, we're just like barely scratching the surface of what I think we can do.
Yeah, well, Lakayana, thank you again for coming on the Bruce Poinsette Show. We're gonna have you come in the studio again for some pure Star Wars slander,
yes,
as we did. we all love Star Wars here, but DJ Ambush here has a weird affinity for the last Skywalker that we gotta take down. But anyways, thank you again for talking about Word is Bond.
Appreciate it.
All the best.
Thank you.
Going forward, and we're gonna keep an eye on everything you're doing.
Likewise, appreciate it.